friends, we are gathered here this evening to remember the men and women who first traveled this valley.
It was contrived for the 50th anniversary of Alberta, so 1955. And that's when it was, I think, written. Music was written. And the play was written by Elsie Park-Gowan, but it didn't get into production until 1956, out at the Palisades, the original site of Lewis Swift. And it ran for 5 years. I only got in it by accident. The second to the last night, they said somebody didn't show up who was Haida. At the end of the play, if you recall, is the Haida is there, and a Haida chief. And he gives this little speech, and all of a sudden the totem pole comes up.
A sign all can read.
It's on a weighted thing. It was very clever, actually. So the first night I did it, I didn't realize I was standing on the totem pole, so it never came up until somebody yelled at me and said, "Move over." I know, I think it was 1980, 75th anniversary of Alberta. That's when they cranked it up the second time. And it went for 5 years again. Jack McCreath came and directed it to start it up, and did it for 2 years, I think. Then I did it for 2 years, and then directed it and acted. Full-time job, unpaid. And so I said, that's enough, I'm not doing any more. So the last year they did it, I said, no way, I'm not doing it. So they brought this fellow in from Edmonton, from the university or something, and paid him $10,000 to direct. Jean's sister was here and she'd never seen it, so we went out to see it the second last night of the run. And we were sitting in the stands, and between the first and second act, I said, I'm going to go down backstage and say hello to everybody, because a lot of the same people acting in it. So I get down there, and they said, are you going to be around for a while? Well, I'm staying, because one of our actors has been drinking, and we're a little worried. So, as it turned out, after the second act, I went back down again, because they said, we might need you to play Swift, because that's what this fellow did. Well, in the meantime, it was time went on and on. Finally, an ambulance came and took him away. He got in a fight, and he was drunk by this time, and so they had to take him away, and I had to fill in as Lewis Swift. The original casting and recording was done, I think they did in the fall of '55, actually. And the Glee Club was quite a big group in those. It was 50 people in it. But they got actors to do the voices of the main characters in Edmonton. And Elsie Park-Gowan wrote it from Swift's diaries and things, and diaries of the early travelers through here.
The canoe was at the landing place.
What shall I do with it?
Put it in a stockade, there's a good lad.
Live horses, live fires, fire campfires. It was very impressive. The darker it got, the better it got. It used to give you goosebumps when they started up. You've heard it.
Yeah. Theatrical.
Can you imagine that on great big speakers out in the outdoors?
Yeah.
I mean, they could hear it over in the campground. And that's how we got a lot of customers. They came up to see what was going on.
I do remember watching the opening ceremony of a bonspiel in the mid-'60s in the old curling rink. Everyone was welcome, even freezing kids warming up from tobogganing. There was a lot of revelry going on, and the wonderful Jasper pipe band was parading the participants onto the ice. I remember one lady in her grey curling sweater with all her badges, proudly marching close to the back of the procession. I think it's fair to say that she had a few under her belt, when suddenly down she goes onto the ice. As she hits, her huge beehive-like wig pops off and settles about 5 feet from her head. Most of the parading curlers didn't notice the incident as she was in the back of the group, so they kept marching to the pipers. Help arrived, and she was not hurt. It was the funniest thing to see that lady's hair go flying across the ice amidst all the pomp and pageantry. Submitted by Jim Way.
Mom and Dad had the Sunset Ice Cream Parlor in Edson, where they were married and where I was born. And back in those days, in the 30s, there used to be sports days in Jasper, Hinton, and Edson. And Dad decided that he would fill up the car with all the goodies that he could sell and go to the sports days. And when he came to Jasper, they just fell in love with Jasper and said, that's where we want to live. So they sold the ice cream parlor in Edson and moved to Jasper, opened up the Sunset Ice Cream Parlor in Jasper. And as soon as they came to Jasper, they fell in love with the place. Said, this is where we want to come and open up the Sunset Ice Cream Parlor. So they did. They rented on the corner there, Pyramid Hotel. Cy Davenant owned the Pyramid Hotel and the round, where the Round Drugstore is right now. And we lived in the back, and I went to school from that building all the time and played in the back alley there. And as the business grew and the kids came from school, after school they all went to Baxter's for a Coke or whatever, ice cream cone. It soon became Baxter's instead of the Sunset Ice Cream Parlor. So they just changed the name to Baxter. Wanda Garford worked for Mom and Dad in the coffee shop. A lot of the local schoolgirls did. And this menu I got from Alice Mazeppa, who was from Mercole, came down to Jasper to go to school. Mom made all the baking. It was all homemade. We kept track one summer in that location. Mom made 449 two-layer chocolate cakes that sliced into 16 pieces. So you know how much chocolate cake we sold that summer. I'll tell you a little story about the old store. You remember the film Emperor's Waltz? It was filmed here in Jasper. I was in that film, yeah. And Mom and Dad got to be great friends with Bing Crosby. And one day I came back from school and went into the back, and we had a couch there. Here's Bing Crosby, stretched out on the couch, having a snooze. But the big thing was the train rush. You got all hyped up when the train came in, because they only had maybe 20 minutes or half an hour. They wanted to get a sandwich and a cup of coffee and get back on that train before it left. And we had 18 stools. You'd have 18 people sitting down. You'd have another 18 plus standing behind, wanting to get served or getting served, eating at the same time, and another bunch behind them waiting to get in to eat and go. After 4 was the school kids. The school kids all came down, so you had another rush then. And then in the evening it was the shows. We used to have a show at 7, got out at 9. Another one went in at 9, got out at 11. So you would get the people from the show would come down after and have a coffee. And we stayed open till 11 o'clock at night just to sell some coffee. Unbelievable. Cherry Cokes with the kids. They loved the Cherry Cokes, yeah. And floats, yeah. And of course, Mom's chocolate cake, that was a big one, and flapper pie. It's a custard, it's a graham wafer crust with a custard and a meringue, and then graham wafer on top of that, yeah. Oh yeah, it was a big item, flapper pie. Yeah.
Do you have the recipes?
I sure do, yeah. They're very popular. Yeah, I've had requests, especially now with on Facebook with Jasper in the good old days. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had requests for, hey, you got the recipe for your mom's flapper pie? Remember serving this one gentleman. He had pie and coffee, and we had a policy that when you served a person, you collected from them right away. So please pay when served. So that way, you were finished with that customer. You didn't have to go back and bug them to get money or anything like that. Once he was done, you picked up the dishes in, they went and got washed. The next guy was sitting down, you waited on them. And I put this pie and pie a la mode and a cup of coffee down in front of this gentleman. And I said, that'll be 25 cents, please, sir. And he said, 25 cents? back in Winnipeg I can get that for 15 cents. I said, we'll get back on that train and go to Winnipeg because it's 25 cents here.
Well, what I have here is an old map of the town of Jasper, and it originated, we think, back in the 20s. And this map shows Jasper, but it's divided into 5 zones, and those were fire response zones. What would happen is there would be a siren, but it was a steam whistle, an old steam train steam whistle that was strapped on the side of the old roundhouse. And when the fire was called in, they would activate the steam whistle, and what they would do is blast the whistle the number of times of each zone. So if the fire was in zone 4, there would be 4 blasts on the steam whistle. It let the fire brigade know, or the volunteers know, that there was a fire, so they had to get to the fire station and get the old chemical wagon or the horse-drawn wagon, the hose wagon, and they had to get to the fire. But it also let the townspeople know that there was a fire, because back in those days, every able-bodied person would help out at a fire. So when they rang the steam whistle, everybody would go to that place and they would all help out. So there would be a bucket brigade, there would be a fire brigade, and there'd be all sorts of things going on. It was all hands on deck. The first fire hall was built in Jasper in 1914, just over 100 years ago. And the first fire brigade was essentially Parks Canada employees, so people like park wardens and things like that. But it was always supplemented by local people. This zone map and this steam whistle was probably in effect from probably the late teens to up into the late 30s to the early 40s even. The steam whistle it's an old steam engine whistle. Ron Stanko is quite a historian, and he figured out by seeing this map and by talking to some of the old timers that there was a steam whistle, and found out the story behind it. So we went looking for it, and it was said that the steam whistle was at the roundhouse, and at that time the roundhouse was no longer there. Local rail buff, steam buff, Harry Holmes, had the foresight to remove the steam whistle from the roundhouse before it was torn down, and he had it in his possession, and he gratefully gave it back to us, and now we have it on display in our museum. Davies automatic safety fire escape. That was bolted on the wall on the second floor of the train station.
Okay.
The original, like the train station that's there now. So on the second floor, this was bolted up on the wall right beside the window. And the idea behind this was, at the bottom of this rope on each side, there's 2 ropes. There's a little strap. So if there's a fire and you have to get out, what you would do is you would grab the rope, stick your foot into the strap, and jump out the window. And this has a ratchet mechanism in it. So you would jump out the window and this thing would go tick, 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 and you would end up down on the sidewalk. And as you were going down, the other rope was going up. So the next person would jump, grab the rope, put their foot in the strap, they go down on the other side, tick, 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 and you would take turns evacuating the building. So I'm not sure if it was ever actually used, but that's the Davies automatic safety fire escape. Last year was 2014. It was the 100th anniversary of firefighting in Jasper. Back in those days, a lot of it was people running around and screaming. So there was a lot of, it wasn't like you picked up the phone and called 911. So I think every community post-World War II received an air raid siren, and initially Jasper had one. So the idea behind the siren obviously was when there was an emergency, that dispatch at that time would be able to set off the siren, and then the fire brigade volunteers would come to the fire hall and get their gear and get their truck and go.
I was a carpenter back in those days, and I built that chalet that's there right today, as a matter of fact. Where the Whistler Ski Hill was, on the way to the Skytram, there's that youth hostel. What the hell year was that? About 1959 or 60. Just a warming place, and there was a little concession, for food, and in the lower half it was a ski shop and a ski maintenance place. And there was a little suite up in the top floor. Willie Pfister lived up there for a while. Okay. Well, he was an Austrian fellow that came here and then got on with Parks Canada for mountain rescue stuff, Well, myself, I started with one of the park's engineers. he and I made the slash up into Marmot Basin. And that was in about 1946, I think. Whistler was going for quite a while there. Well, until 1964, I guess, or 65. But that time, that was when Marmot Basin started. So Whistler pretty much shut down after that. Jimmy Wynn, he was the manager of Alberta Power at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Noni Jones, she had a travel agency and worked for the CN a little bit too. She played the piano. Jimmy Wynn played the trombone. Bill Duncan played the drums. He was worked in the car department on the railroad. In Spiro's Dance Hall down on Patricia Street there, about, let's see what's there now, Something Else
Oh, yes.
restaurant there. There was a big dance hall there.
Yeah. Wow.
They used to have dances usually a Wednesday night and Friday and Saturday.
What was the band?
I think you go down there and pay 50 cents or something and go in and dance your head off. We were married for 52 years, and if anybody asked Barb what contributed our marriage, you know, being so long, she would say skiing and dancing.
I like that combination. So are you a better dancer or a better skier, Jack?
Oh, I think I was probably a better skier than but I was a good dancer, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know,
My first set of skis are down the basement. Dad made them out of an Arborate countertop. And so that's what got me started on skis. And so, yeah, I grew up, spent all my life on skis. Loved it. I mean, that's what brought me back to Jasper. You know.
oh, Ross is a good skier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to get him out there more. That's all.
There was a whole group of us raised by parents like Willie Fester and the McCrady's, and you know, there's a whole group of families here that, I mean, all the kids, we were, you know, spent our free time out skiing in one form or another.
I taught skiing specifically to the warden service, which was a bit of a chore because, you know, all the wardens in those days were cowboys, and they didn't take to skiing very much.
What's the secret to teaching a cowboy to ski?
All right, I don't know. It didn't work very well, I don't think.
But that's the Jasper story. I mean, so many people who come to Jasper, you know, they come for a year or two and then, you know, work through a series of different jobs until, you know, eventually they decide, well, I'm going to stay here, and eventually they end up finding a job that, you know, will keep them going the rest of their life. But, you know, that's very much the Jasper story. Is, you know, a lot of people do a number of different jobs and a number of things. It's just what you have to do to be able to live where we choose to live, which is Jasper. You know, I've got friends out here who, you know, it doesn't matter whether they're climbers or they're rafters or whatever their passion is. It's, you know, there's a lot of people in job, their passion isn't their work, their passion is, you know, what they do for recreation.
Nestled high in the Canadian Rockies, Jasper is fast becoming one of Canada's great winter fun centers. Ski lovers from all over the continent are discovering the slopes this beautiful resort has to offer. Most popular is the newly developed Marmot Basin. You can count on perfect snow conditions December to May, a choice of deep powder or packed snow. There are no age limits for skiing fun at Jasper. Almost before you realize it, you are a veteran shush boomer. Siesta time on a mountaintop is truly a heavenly interlude. That is, before the excitement starts all over again. Anytime is ski time in Jasper.
Regardless of ability, you will appreciate the finely tuned Marmot slopes. When skiing ends, another world opens up to you in Jasper. Marmot is freedom, action and feelings, sun and snow, people enjoying people, a place for all skiers.
An old boys club. I'd rather be over
No,
here.
Faye, you're very much part of this, my lovely. We need that rose amongst the thorns.
And we were hired by Wayne Kiefer and Dennis Seeley. And I started the lift and called in the weather report every morning. And for that, we got lift tickets and bedrooms in what's now the Eagle Chalet, Upper Chalet.
And I worked for Brewster Transport from the age 15. I was transferred to Jasper. We would move, I would say, 200 or 300 people in about a 2-hour period of time.
Been skiing at Marmot ever since 1964. Started working there when I first came to Jasper, and I'm still working there.
Haven't you been paid yet?
That was the year they were open, and we were only open weekends. And I worked in the ski shop, and I was 14 years old, and I worked with Terry Clark, and we took turns. One of us would work one day and ski the next, and vice versa on weekends.
I came to Jasper in 1949 when I was 15 and a half, and finished my high school here, and I never left. And I married Tom McCready, and we became a skiing family.
He phoned down to get the ambulance to come up because somebody had broken their leg. He phoned I think it was George Foley in the switchboard, and then he put him over to the chief warden, Mickey McGuire, and he said, "Mickey, send up a ambulance." And Mickey said, "Well, what's the problem? What do you want the ambulance for?" He said, "Well, what was his name?
Bud Seeley.
Bud Seeley just tipped over and he busted both hind legs."
So when we were building Marmot in '64, Kurt Kiefer had bought a bunch of old deuce and a halves from the Army. And that was kind of, that was our truck, you know, for hauling supplies and lumber and things like that. And we used to have a fine jar. If you went off the road, it cost you 50 cents. If you went off the road and you had to get towed out, it cost you $1. If you went off the road and flipped over onto your side, it cost you $2. We had so much money that we had a real good party.
Mike and I didn't have any money. So when we came to Jasper, we stayed at the Brewster block. So Mrs. J became a very fond kind of den mother for us. And on weekends, the Brewster block would be filled with a whole bunch of Edmonton guys that would be up here partying our faces off and skiing up at Whistler or Marmot, wherever it was, I can't even remember. But I think we went skiing, didn't we?
About that time, I was working at Totem Ski Shop, and our best seller was wineskins. Everybody ski with a wineskin.
Yeah.
And if you could get your wineskin right out here and hit your mouth, you're doing really good.
Yeah, you were
Even
expert.
better if I could get my wineskin out here and hit your mouth.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. We all survived.
The lower hill was quite a big hill, and it had a big hump in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So if you were racing that, you kind of went around the side of that hump. And Tony Clettle, he came around the corner at the top there onto that big hill, and I guess he saw the finish line and just aimed for it. And he hit that bump. I remember turning away because I didn't want to see him land. Anyway, there was a hell of a crash when he came down. And anyway, I looked up, and by God, he was starting to stand up. And then he started to kind of aim towards the finish line again, and he looked down, and on one ski he had about 18 inches, you know, both the front and the back were busted off. And on the other ski he had the tip gone.
We postponed our wedding a week so that Tom could go in the Marmot Derby, because, I mean, what's a week in a married life? So our wedding was postponed.
Now that's dedication, honey. Cheryl Nolan would sit at the top of the yellow chair doing her macrame and smoking, and Ferguson would be up there on the deck of the yellow chair barbecuing. Oh yeah.
So we'd make up things like this is how Kubasok Capers started off as a Ukrainian National Ski Week.
Yeah.
It only ran for a day, but it was called Ukrainian National Ski Week.
Yeah.
But we got so much flack for calling it that we changed the name to Kubasok Capers.
I remember how it all ended though with the guy. His name was Cliff, and he played the trumpet.
And I look up, and here's this guy,
He's the
starting
dude.
naked,
Yeah.
coming down the hill playing "Hey, Let Me Over."
And that was the end of Kubasok.
Where he played that one.
In 1962, I was actually working on a hydro project for the city of Revelstoke, and the contractor for the steel pipe, Gunther Schramm, came into my office one day and said, "How much would it cost to build a tram?" And, "Oh, where's the tram?" "Oh, he couldn't tell me that." "Well, how tall is it? What's the height? What have you got the profile?" "Oh, I can't tell you that." He couldn't tell me anything. So I said, "Well, how long's a piece of string?" And he left the office, and he got the message, because with no information, how could I tell him? So we did, and a week later he came back to the office, and we took the train up here, and we hiked up the tram. That was in something like June '62. And then he phoned me, and he told me who they were. It was Norm Gustafson of Gustafson Drilling in Calgary, and Bill McGregor of Micmac Oil and Gas. I phoned Gustafson, and I got an invitation to go and see him, so I took my boss with me, and we spent a couple of hours with him one morning in Calgary, and then flew back to Vancouver. And a couple of weeks later I got a phone call from him, would I come and sit on his side of the table and ask questions of someone that wants to build a tram for him. I said, "Sure." And we spent 3 days with them. But over breakfast with Gustus and McGregor on the third morning, we decided we would ask them if they would accept a contract to design and build the tram. Now, that would not include, that would be up to have the tram operating up to the deck level so we could load passengers, etc. And then Gustus and McGregor would hire their own architect, and they would house the terminals. In those days, there were no regulations regarding tramways. There had not. This was the first passenger carrying tramway that was built in Canada for guests. There were one or two. The one on Pyramid Mountain was built for carrying men, but it was purely for service. It wasn't a paying operation. we got this thing finished and tested I think it was opened on the 1st of July of '64. Just after that, I have a photograph of the Chief Department of Labour from Alberta up having a look at it and being shown around with Gunter Schramm. And by that time we had the pool construction up. They provided the concrete slabs for the building up top and the slabs round below. And as soon as we got that done and the first lot of walls, temporary walls up, we opened for the public. We took the right-hand cabin off and put a freight car on it, and we carried concrete up in the tram and people up on the other side, and there was free coffee at the top. But that's how we ran the first year, and it was fantastic.
My mother, Rosemary Wall, nee Bacon, moved to Jasper in 1957. After getting married and having my brothers Perry and Gilbert, she decided she needed a bike. She bought a bike from Noni Jones for $2. Noni had received the bike for her 16th birthday in the 20s or the 30s. My father, Fred, built a large steel basket to carry kids in. I have great memories of my mom and Carol Noveletto hauling Joanne and I all over the place. I remember us running into a bear cub down at Old Fort Point, and our moms hauling butt up that honkin' hill in those not-so-light one-speed bikes. Many years later, my mom was biking downtown, bumped into a woman walking out of Smitty's, sent her flying. She was extremely irate, but not hurt. She said that the bike was a menace on the road. When Mom got home, she told us the story. We all howled. Then my brothers told her the beast made of steel was like a German tank, and the name stuck. Eventually, we got a new bike for her birthday, and she donated Tank to the museum. My brothers and I were heartbroken, as we may have made fun of it, but man, we would have taken it in for ourselves. It would have been the coolest town bike ever. Sent in by Shannon Wall.